We're in Sefer Yetzira, the third perek, the fifth Mishnah. And we're talking about the three mothers. The three mothers are part of the 22 letters. The 22 letters are part of the 32 lanes. The 32 lanes are the original expression of the divine. The divine is the force that exists, the only one that exists. And it shares existence with different flavors, different forms of clothing of the divine. So the original clothing is 32. These 32 are represented in the human form, in the way that we operate. This is the stamp, this is the formula of creation. And these original forces that through them were animated are called together Elohim, which is the divine, or some call it God. But God represents a singular. This singular, depending on how we imagine him, is either a representative of something real, which is the source intelligence from where we came forth, or it represents an idol, which is an imagined being that we make up in our minds. And so God, if it doesn't represent the 32 forces and it doesn't represent the Tzelem Elohim, that God is a false idol that's competing with the Tzelem Elohim. He's pretending to be the Tzelem Elohim. But those who worship him, they're not worshiping Tzelem Elohim. They don't know Tzelem Elohim. They're worshiping an idea in their mind. And so whatever idea they formulated in their mind, that's what they'll be worshiping. In each religion, they'll have a different type of puppet that they imagine, that they place in the seat of God, and then they worship him based on their own fantasy of what that puppet would want. But the Tzelem Elohim is the form of the worlds. How do we know it's the form of the worlds? Because he stamped us in it. He doesn't let us run away from it. He didn't create us some invisible bubble that we have to guess what it is. He gave us a form. He gave us a way of knowing ourselves. This way of knowing ourselves is by putting on a body on the invisible, which is the spirit. And this body is like a glove. It has for every function of the spirit an organ in order to express that function. And so how do we know the spirit can think? Well, let's look at the body. Oh, it has a brain. Yes, the spirit can think. How do we know the spirit can feel? Let's look at the body. Oh, it has a heart. Yes, the spirit can feel. How do we know it can hear? Oh, let's look at the body. It has ears. Yes, it can hear. The body cannot do anything with this information. It doesn't mean anything to the body. It means something to the spirit. And what it means to the spirit, this is what's now going to formulate in the body. The spirit is the one that sees, that hears, that smells and tastes and touches and thinks and moves. This is the spirit that's doing that, the invisible spirit, not the part of us that we know, the part of us that we don't know. And that spirit is B'Tselem Elohim. It has all the parts so that we can know the divine. Who is the divine? The source of the soul. What does the source of the soul look like? Like a soul, but not like a soul. What does the body look like? Like a soul, but not like a soul. The soul is the essence of it. The body is the expression of that essence. The body has heat. The body has water. The body has air. These are the three elements that animate the body. Oh, the source has fire, the source has air, the source has water. Elohim has some type of fire, water, and air because the Tzelem Elohim has some type of fire, water, and air. Elohim can say, why? Because the Tzelem Elohim can speak. That's how we know. because if he reveals his ability to speech through me, then even more so the source, the intelligence that made me, of course he can do what I'm doing a lot better. And so Elohim, the divine, can only be known through the Tzelem Elohim, the divine form. If someone has any image of the Elohim that's not related and based on the Tzelem Elohim, that's called Elohim Acherim. He made himself up another God. It's not the God. The God is the forms that he formulated in the Tzelem Elohim. This is the divine form. If one knows the God through the Tzelem Elohim, this is the God, the real God, the one who made it. But if one has a concept of God that is not based on the Tzelem Elohim, that's Elohim Acherim, that's another God. He made it up. Be careful from that God. That God can destroy worlds. He has no respect for what was created. He's not the God of this planet at all. He's a made-up God. And so if his idea of God comes from a book, comes from a person, comes from belonging to a certain group or doing some type of ritual or making something happen, and it's not based on the Tzelem Elohim, that God is an idol. That God destroys the world, doesn't build it. He doesn't know the world. He doesn't know how to build it. He doesn't know what's good for the world or what's bad for the world. And so the forces that create the Tzelem Elohim, the forces that are thought, speech, feeling, hearing, seeing, smelling, these are the divine forces. This reveals to us the nature of the divine. Anything else, anything that comes from some other source, this is called avodah zarah, a strange work. Why is it strange? Because who is it for? What is the purpose? Who is it trying to help? It's a strange work. It's a work that doesn't enter well into the Tzelem Elohim. It doesn't complement the Tzelem Elohim. It offends the Tzelem Elohim. That's called avodah zarah. And so now, in order to worship, we have to get to know the Tzelem Elohim in all its different faces, in all its different manifestations, in order to know how to interact with God. Which God? The real God. The God that made it. The God that wants it just so. The God that likes it that it's this way. Only him we have to worship. The one that doesn't like it the way that it was created is not God. The one that comes and says, no, we need to destroy this, it's not God. God can be in conflict with the beliefs of people, not because God can change or God can be in conflict. It's because the very nature of existence is built in such a way that if you are against it, it is against you. And so you don't really exist. The only thing that happened is that now you placed it against you. And so when we are in line with the Tzelem Elohim, we are worshiping God. All the prayers and the learning and the deeds that we can do, they're all related to reality, to the Tzelem Elohim. If they're not related to the Tzelem Elohim, then they themselves become avodah zarah. They themselves become a distraction and a numbing mechanism rather than enlightenment, regaining our sensitivities, regaining our innocence. And so the three are part of the 22. The 22 are part of the 32, which means this is the essence of creation. This is why we are the way that we are. And so it says, Shalosh imois emesh, the three mothers, Aleph Mem Shin, Chakekan v'chatzvan, he engraved them and carved them out, v'tzarfan, and he combined them, he created different combinations. The combinations means different orders, who is in charge of who. A combination where fire is in charge and air and water are thereafter. a combination where air is in charge and fire and water are thereafter, a combination where water is in charge and fire or air. These combinations create different organs and different manifestations of spirit. And so in the organs we're going to see different orders of the elements and what animate the organs. Some organs are more water-based, some organs are more air-based, and some are heat-based. And they're all a combination of all. And in every organ, every other organ is represented. And every microcosm represents the entire macrocosm, and the body represents the entire whole. And so somehow from the infinite came forth the finite. And that finite is the expression of the infinite. One who believes that the finite is not related to the infinite is called a mekatzetz benetias, someone who is cutting off the plants that are growing out of the infinite. The infinite is a field of potential from where came forth the finite. The finite is sacred because it's growing on the infinite. The finite represents the infinite. Those who don't know that it's sacred, they offend the infinite, and then they lose their sacredness. By their very nature, they are sacred because they are an expression of the infinite. But by going against the infinite and becoming at odds with the source, they lose their sacredness, because against the source, they're not sacred. They're just a representation of him. They're not more important than him. They're a revelation. And so as long as they are aligned with the infinite, they're a revelation of the infinite. Once they go into conflict with the infinite, they are no longer a revelation, and now they've lost their sacredness. In those who have lost their sacredness is still a hidden message from the infinite, but only the wise can see that message. It's not a revelation that is obvious. It's a revelation that can be found by those who can understand. This is the work of correcting souls, tikkun and neshamas, the Baal Shem Tov is famous for, is to understand how that soul is a revelation of the infinite. What is the root of that expression? Because also when we get frustrated, there's a method to the madness. What is this madness saying about what should have been sane, and what should have been sane would have revealed from the infinite? And so these letters, he combined with them in order to create many different vessels, many different revelations. V'chosam be'em sholosh imois ba'olam, he created with them, he sealed with them 3 mothers in space, which in the world, v'sholosh amis b'shona, and 3 mothers in time, which he calls year. V'sholosh imois b'nefesh, and 3 mothers in consciousness, in soul. Zohar and Nekev, and each one there's a male and a female, because now we're already on the level of vessels, which include the light and a vessel that can receive the light. This represents the male energy and the female energy on each level. This is how the infinite gets revealed, is by dressing up in many different clothing, and on each level of clothing it becomes a little bit more susceptible to the senses until it becomes formulated as a physical body, and there the senses can interact with it. And so every level that it goes down, every level that the metaphor dresses up with another level of clothing, there's a male and a female. There's a part that represents the higher level that's coming down, and there's a part that represents the lower level that's coming up. And there, by that interaction, there's a new layer of clothing for the infinite. And then that gives it forward. And this is happening every moment. So as I speak now, the concept of my words becomes a light that's going to animate the body. And for that light to materialize within the body, it has to go from the world of concept into the world of emotion, through to the world of the actual physical organs that are causing the circulation, and taking this information and making it into a material fact based on the interpretation of the spirit. And so in this process, there are many levels of males and females that receive the concept, dress it up according to their level. Their level gives it forward, dresses up according to a lower level, until it becomes susceptible to the body, so that the body can eat this spiritual food and gain sustenance from it. That the level of fire in the body is increased. The level of air in the body is increased. The level of desire in this body, which is the water, is increased. All by the sustenance of the words, as the different levels of males and females were giving over the information and causing the blood to create an experience. And so these three revelations of fire, air, and water are three that come out in three, which is time, space, and consciousness. In time, it's represented by the seasons. In space, it's represented by the location of the seas, the oceans, on top of them the air, the atmosphere, and on top of them the fire, the stars, the burning gas, the heavens. And so there, it's in space, and in consciousness, fire represented by the nerves, the head, the brain, the thinking, air represented by the lungs and the heart and circulation, the spirit that animates the body, and water represented by the liver and the intestines, the desires and the physical manifestations. And so these are ways of how the divine reveals. These are levels of how he dresses up in order to become more and more manifested. In the world of thought, there's revelation, but less manifestation. In the world of emotion, there is less revelation, more manifestation. In the world of sensation, there is the least revelation, the most manifestation, and that's what's dressed in the body. So all these layers, they're preparing to engrave the spiritual within the physical body. And then it comes into the experience, and it causes a shift in the ancient air that has dressed up as all the different elements and has become all the different forms. And then the ancient air is a little bit different. Maybe it even thinks of itself as modern. And so he says in the Parish, with the power of the intelligence, the power of the wisdom, he engraved the three elements, hen ba'avir, hen b'mayim, hen ba'esh, v'himtzi me'em yisodis, v'shorish ba'olam, v'b'shona b'nefesh. And so he took these original Elohim, the forces that are beyond the visible, that we only know they're there from the visible, but they are way beyond the visible, and he made visible things like seasons, like air that we can breathe, and water that we can drink, and fire that we can get warmth from. These are all coming forth. These are not the gods. This was some of those idol worshippers that lost their way would see how the wise would relate to the revelation of the one, and they would think that what they're looking at, the revelation, is the one. They wouldn't be able to understand the distinction between the force that is represented by fire, which is part of the Elohim, and the revealed fire, which is part of the animated world and perceived by the imagination. What is the problem with serving the revealed fire rather than the essence of fire, which is the God of fire, which is the unity from where the 32 came forth? That if we worship the individual fire, if we worship the revelation, this gives the domain of God over to our imagination. And then who knows what that God will say? We'll have no way to find out what he wants and if what he's saying is right. There will be no way to reconcile with that God, because he's not the God that is all. He's an individual part of the revelation of God. And so that God will for sure be lopsided. That God, for example, if we speak to him, he might say, I hate water. Water turns me out. But the God that made fire doesn't hate water. The God that made fire loves water. He made water just like he made fire. So that God, when I find him there I'm going towards the unity. There I'm not worshiping a figment of my own imagination. There I'm worshiping the essence of all beings that decided for the beings to be the way that they are. The revelation that is revealing itself through the entire Tzelem Elohim, through all the different parts and the balance between the parts. And so when we find these forces in the different dimensions, when we find the same forces in time as we find in space, the same forces in space as we find in consciousness, these are testifying to the unity. These are saying, by their mere existence, that we come from the same source, because look, we're organized in the same way, in the same pattern in all places. We cooperate with each other to create your reality. This cooperation between the parts is a demonstration of the unity. So he made a root from them in all these different dimensions so that we can interact with them. With the power of bina, of understanding, he carved them. And so there it came forth and it became elements. Carving means taking something out from the infinite potential. The infinite potential is the mountain, and from that mountain we're going to remove a potential and make it into a manifested reality. And so the fact that water looks like water, this is part of the infinite potential of what water could have looked like. And when the wisdom interacted with the spirit to create water, the water that came forth is being carved out from the infinite potential, and now this is what it looks like. This is the shape and the size of the water in those dimensions. And the same for fire, the same for air. They were being carved out from infinity, and these are the forms that they took on in order to represent to the spirit what is trying to be communicated to the spirit that's going to inhabit the four elements within the body. That's us, the human spirit. So the body was being prepared, the worlds were being prepared, all the creations were being prepared, so that when consciousness dwells within the body, consciousness will be able to read the map and rediscover its own nature. Sarfan, he combined them. Perish Chiber Havayis, he combined the Havayis. Havayis are the elements of being. The elements of being means everything that is has a force that's giving it life. Sometimes angels, sometimes human souls. And behind every element there's a divine spark, a divine being that wishes it to be so. These sparks are called Havayas. They're the beings that cause all being. They're the fragments of the big being that he shares with everything that is in order for them to be. And so he created from these Havayas, he created different combinations that became fire, air, and water, and he combined fire, air, and water in order to create different permutations. Shaklon, he weighed them. Like, for example, there's a weight to physical air, there's a weight to water, there's a weight on the physical level, and also on the spiritual level. There's a weight to the production of every organ, how much it's going to create, and how much is healthy for it to create, and how much is beyond its limit. And so for every function, for every type of movement within the organs, there are different limits that it's weighing in order to create a proper manifestation, in order to create life. Ve'emiran, he switched their places. Zeh she'o yisaf li'es rosh, v'zeh she'o yirosh li'esaf. Who will be in the beginning and who will be the end? V'tzar b'hem gimel emes ba'olam, gimel emes b'shona, v'gimel emes b'nefesh zocher nekeva. Perish. Kishem she'ez zocher nekeva b'nefesh. Just like we can see that there's a male and a female on the level of soul, on the level of consciousness. How can we see? Because we see them embodied. Once we see a male and a female embodied, we cannot deny that they are not male and female. The will of the one who made them as they are. And so we see the will of the male and the female on the level of nefesh, on the level of soul. Ken yesh soid zocher nekeva b'shona, the same way, there is that same concept in a secret way, in an invisible way, when it relates to time. There are times there are females and there are times there are male. On the basic level, we would say that the day is a male and the night is a female. And therefore the day is going to create the content and the night is going to digest the content. And so in the seasons, there are different ways of counting, whether summer is the female and winter is the male, or summer is the male and winter is the female. But there are different contributions that are happening that result in what we would say. So the time of planting is the male. The time when the fruits come forth is the female. This is on the most basic level if we relate to the seasons as they produce fruits and produce. All this production is happening in a cycle of a male and a female. Also on the level of the astrological signs, there are males and females, and there are different elements that are being represented. And so all this is coming forth from the elements as they dress up in the male and the female. And these are the signs that are male. Teleh, Aries, Shor is Taurus, Arya is Leo, Maznaim is Libra, Keshes is Sagittarius, and Deli is Aquarius. These are the males. Ve'elen anikeves, Tu'umim, Gemini, Sartan, Cancer, B'sula, Virgo, Akraf, Scorpio, Gdi, Capricorn, Dogem is Pisces. And so these are the female signs. And so these happening in different months. And so in those months when these signs are in charge, it's a time of creative power that's taking from the infinite and manifesting a seed. And the other times are the time where the seed is getting developed and is bearing fruit. And so all these relate to many different processes that are happening also in the body and also in the soul on all the different levels. But these are the real expressions of the Tzelem Elohim. This is the nature of how we become who we are. So when we say that these are the feminine elements, the feminine signs, it means that they are more represented in the feminine, in the females of all the different creatures. Because these are all revelations, expressions of the divine energy. And so when these energies get revealed, they are revealing what was hidden before. But even while it was hidden, it already had these distinctions. It's just that we couldn't see them there. We're seeing them in the revealed. And so when we see in the revealed the male and the female, this is not because it begins in the revealed. Male and female exist way before the revealed. In the revealed, we can see a demonstration of what they are. And this is the metaphor for us to understand the nature of the truth. The same thing with the 7 planets of the solar system. Some of them male, some of them female. The same with time, the different seasons of the year. Also the winds, and also the spirits that animate man. So There are some times when we are more in receiving mode. There's some times when we are more in creation mode. All this is related to the spirits of the male and the female that animate all of us. ומכאן נסבוין ככל אלה ככס כולם נשפעו לככובם למזלס וליום וללילה ולבוא משם של ההווייס ושם של מהנבס כמו שמסתי בלמעלה. All these forces, all these spirits, all these movements are coming forth from the source that gives existence, that shares existence with all that exists. And so everything has havayas, has root energy that's being manifested, and that root energy is divine. That's the will of the source. This is how he willed it to be. The next Mishnah, Mishnah Vav, Himlecho is Aleph Beruach. He crowned the letter Aleph on the element of air. The kosher lekeser, he tied to him a crown, v'tzarfan zeim zeh, and he combined them one with the other, meaning all the different ones. Now he creates the air, he ties it to the letter Aleph. So Aleph represents the higher source. Aleph is one of the letters. The letters are the 22 Elohim, which are part of the 32. 10 spheres, 22 letters. So Aleph is the letter, and that letter is now becoming manifest as spirit, as air. This is what animates us. And so this is the first crowning that he is doing. He is taking the letter, the divine emanation, the divine revelation, and he's creating a physical element from it called air. This is how he's revealing the hidden. The Aleph is hidden. The Aleph we can't know directly. We know it's there because it's animating us, but we can't know it directly. But now he's giving us air, and he says this is a dress for that Aleph. This represents that emanation, that revelation for the world of the senses. And then he combines it with all the others, meaning the air that he creates has in it fire and has in it water. It's already going to have some heat in it, which is coming from the fire, and it already has moisture in it, which is coming from the water. And so when he creates the Aleph, he is already making him compatible with the others, because the others are coming forth and they're all representing the same unity. So the Aleph is not represented alone as the Aleph. The Aleph is represented together with the fire and the water that are creating the air. Then he seals with it the air in the world, which is the air that we breathe, and warm in time, the times that are warm, which is the spring and the autumn. When it's not too hot and not too cold, that's represented by air. And Gevuya Benefesh, it's the chest in consciousness. It's represented by the area of the heart and the lungs. And so the body that's in between the head and the stomach is the representative of air. And there we see, what does it mean, air in consciousness? In time, it's the time that it's warm between the seasons. In space, it's the atmosphere that's filled with air that we can breathe. And in consciousness, it's whatever is represented by lungs and heart, whatever lungs and heart do to the soul, that's where you find air. And this relates to emotions. It relates to the power to animate ourselves, to keep ourselves going, to keep the life force within the body. It relates to the compatibility we have with spirit, what kind of spirits can reveal themselves through us. So all this is represented by the air, which is the ruach, the spirit that lives within creation, This air is what we speak into. Like now, I'm speaking into the air. The air now knows. The hevel, the moisture that comes out from my mouth, is revealing to the air what I'm saying, and how I feel when I'm saying it, and how authentic is my saying. And accordingly, the air now knows. If you understand me, your breath is causing my saying to become stronger in the air. The air is a big brain. The air thinks what will happen next. I'm speaking into it. Where do we see an example of air that you can speak into? Your ears. Inside your ears, there's air. That air is going to reveal to the air that's within your blood. And then you're going to know. And then you're going to behave accordingly. Well, the one that made you is at least as intelligent as you. The air that you breathe in and gives you intelligence, it knows at least how to calculate as good as you. And so when you breathe out, now the air knows. This is why it says, the world only stands on hevel piem shel tinoike shebes rabam, from the children who are still breathing pure air. They're not yet guilty, and they breathe, and therefore the world remains intact. If only the adults were breathing, we would be instructing the air to eliminate us. But the children who breathe, they create compassion within the air, and then the air remains and gives us life, and is hoping for these children to do better than their parents. And so the combination of these letters within the Aleph, the letters Aleph, Mem, Shin, which represent the mothers, which represent air, fire, and water, we're going to have now a male and a female representation of air, because everything was created male and female. And so because it's going to be representing air, it means air is going to be the dominant one in both of them. That's the spirit that animates us. But the male is going to be a combination of Aleph, Mem, Shin, which means first air, spirit, animation, but first water, and then fire. And the female is going to be a nekeva, but Osham nekeva is going to have a combination of first fire, then water. This combination, Osham, represents guilt. If the fire is before the water, it means spirit, fire, water. Fire is the side that can pull us towards guilt. Fire is the side that wakes up the mekatrik, the midas hadin. And so if fire is first, this can create osham, this creates guilt. And so this is why it says the zohar was created b'midas harachmim. The zohar has the mem first, he has the water first. The nekeva has the fire first. And so the water has to create peace within the fire. The water has to bring back compassion within the fire. This is the combination. And then, if they can do that with each other, then then there's a revelation. If not, if there isn't, if they're together but they don't have the ability to reduce the fire, then Eish Achlasan, the fire itself, eats them. What's the Eish? Aleph, spirit, and Shin, fire. When the spirit has fire, this eats away the soul, unless we can find water to calm the fire. And so these two combinations are both air. This is both a demonstration of the power that creates air. But the power that creates air, because he contains in him the element of fire and the element of water, he has two different combinations of how he can manifest. He can manifest where the air is first and then there's water. And the last is fire, then we call it a male. And he can manifest where the first is air, then is fire, and the last is water, then we call it a female. Him lechois aleph, says the parish. And so the first force that comes up before the king of all kings in order to create the kings, in order to create these individual forces that are going to manifest as all of life. So the first thing that comes up is the Aleph, the first letter, and the Aleph receives a representation of air. And this air is becoming spirit, and this air is what animates all the others. Everything that's going to come forth now is coming forth within, and as a result of this air that came forth first. V'kosher lekeser, he tied to it the crown. Perish kosher ois aleph baruch alim Chaim. He tied the letter to the life force, to the divine life force that gives life to all, anikra keser elyon, that's called the highest crown. The highest crown is the source of manifestation, because now we're speaking about manifestation. Where are we? We're in the Malchus. The Malchus is the lowest of the spheres, and in the Malchus there's manifestation. All the manifested worlds are part of the Malchus. And so from where does the Malchus get this inspiration that's going to create a manifestation of air? It comes from the Keser El, it comes from the will that goes beyond, from the source, from the infinite one, comes forth the will, and that is what reveals itself in the Malchus as air. Through the highest crown, air came to the world. In there, through there, from there is the life of all the worlds. All the angels, all the forces are receiving life through the spirit that was animated by the Keser Elyon, by the highest crown. The highest crown means the first revelation that we can somehow refer to. That's why it's called the highest crown. Beyond that, there are worlds upon worlds that we have no access to, the human mind cannot contemplate. The one who made this, the reason that there is the highest crown, we can't even talk about or refer to in any way. But the highest crown is how far have the visionaries, have the sages, have the prophet gone into the unknown in order to discover our origin, to discover our real nature, to discover what is this being that is dressed up as us, and what does it really want. Warmth in time. This is the wind within the air. When he's in the medium range, he's not cold and he's not hot. The torso in consciousness, gvir means the inside of man. The inside of man is his heart. Anywhere you will find spirit, know that this is Aleph, the source of air that is revealing itself. All life, all spirit, all animation, if you see it in animals, if you see it in plants, anywhere where you see that there is some level of spirit being animated in order to create a form in the physical, this spirit that's being animated comes forth from the Aleph, which is the source, which is the beginning, which is what dressed up as all these different manifestations. וצריך לדעת שאלה שורש מילס עולם שון הנפש יספר שבדרך כלל עולם אל בינו, מה שלמעלה ממנו כעולם עליין, שון על תפארס, כי בו ידבע זווייס, כי בו יהיה קבוע חדשים מזמנים, ונפש על מלכוס, כי ביוד הנפש כל חוי. And so when we say time, space, and consciousness, he says this also relates to the world of space, which is the highest, which is the world of intelligence. That's where you have the raw elements that are going to dress up in time in order to create some type of a narrative, some type of a storyline. And so before they dress up in time, they are in space. And that's the intelligence. Time lives in the 12 combinations of the name of the Tiferes, And so olam, we say, is the bina. Space is the level of intelligence. Time represents the tiferes, represents the attributes. The attributes somehow play a game over time where they reveal each other. If there's no time, there's no revelation of attributes. And so the attributes represent time, and the nefesh is the malchus, the consciousness is represented by manifestation, because that's where consciousness receives form. Beyond manifestation, consciousness is infinite. So the form within consciousness comes from manifestation. So the malchus represents consciousness. ויספרש גם כן דרך הפרט עולם על גלגל המרכבה וארצס המרכבה ואווירם ושונה על בינס יצור המרכבה בחזורס וסיבוב המרכבס עלי ראשם וספיר הזמן על יוסם וירידוסם וסיבובם וישתנס אווירים מקור ראשונם ולושן שינו ויסחלפס היצורים בהם לפי מערכס ההווייס. And so the chariot that gives the infinite the ability to access the finite, when the infinite becomes finite, we say that it's traveling. And when it's traveling on a chariot. The chariot is the tzelem Elohim, which is all these different tools, all these different forces that interact together in order to create a finite experience to the infinite. And so as it's dressing up in the chariot, there's a throne that upon it is sitting the tzelem Elohim, upon it is sitting there's like a man sitting on top of the throne. This man is the tzelem Elohim, and the tzelem Elohim is riding on many angels in order to create its functions. And so he says that time represents the wheels of the chariot. And he's saying that Olam, space, represents the wheels of the chariot as it travels throughout all the different locations within the zodiac. Every location within the zodiac is representing a different letter, a different force, a different revelation. And so space is represented by all the different revelations that are each in its own space. Each star, each angel has a domain where it reveals its glory. And space and time represents the events that come forth from these spaces. The spaces themselves are the forces, but then these forces animate and they create action. They create events and circumstances to take place in this world in order to demonstrate their power. And so according to these forces, wars will happen on the planet, or different natural disasters might happen on the planet. If humanity is not attached to the force that is beyond these forces, if the unity is not present within the hearts, then we are under the forces of nature that cause all types of calamities, all types of conflict. And so it's called Shona because Miloshen Shinu, it's constantly changing. They create different combinations. Lefi Marches Hava is according to the structures that are organized for creation, how they come into being. Each cell of being, each entity, each part of existence has its instructions that are coming from the elements of Emesh. These are the elements that we are talking about. From all the 32 routes, paths, there's different instructions that they give to their manifestations of how they're going to interact. According to their location, they will have different behaviors. Just like in the body, the cells know where they're located in order to know how to cooperate. And this is the power of the soul. The cells don't have enough instructions to know their location, but the soul that resides within the organ can instruct each cell so that it knows how to cooperate with the other cells. There are collective intelligences within the organs that are giving instructions to the details. And so according to their location, they know their nature. ולפי שכל הצורס מדומם וצמח וחיים מדבר כולם כלולים בהווייס, because everything that's created, from the inanimate to the plant to the animal to the speaking, all are created from these particles of existence, from these divine emanations. Kulam klilim ba'olam v'shana nefesh, they're all included in the demonstrations created by time, space, and consciousness. Lefichach yomer Yetzira EP16. So when he creates time, just like when he creates matter, we say that he created something to be a certain way. He created an elephant to be a certain shape. The same thing, the days. He's creating the days, because the days are just, for him, different type of particles, different types of expressions that he creates in order to reveal his glory. And so for that, the pasuk says, Yomim Yitzoru v'lo echad behem. Days will be formed, but not one of them. He's not found in any of the days that he forms. He's not found in any of the creations that he creates. But there's a kol yuchas l'olam yuchas l'shona l'nefesh. Everything you'll find in space, you'll find it in time, and you'll find it in consciousness. Everything exists in all dimensions. The next Mishnah, Mishnah Zayin, him lechois mem b'mayim v'kosher l'keser. The letter Mem received as its inheritance water, and he tied to him a crown, and he combined them with the other elements. He sealed with it the earth in world. The earth is mostly water, so the earth is like basically a vessel for the oceans. V'kor b'shono, and winter in time for water. Ibeten benefesh, and the stomach in consciousness. And so the three different emanations in space and time and consciousness, Zohar and Nekeva, each one has a male and a female. Zohar b'mem aleph shin, Zohar was with the water first, and the air second, and the fire third, and the Nekeva b'masho. The female was with the water first, the fire second, and the air third. And so these combinations represent two different types of water. One water is there in order to bring the potential, and one water is there in order to develop the potential. The Parish Mishneches, him lechois mem b'mashaleh b'tchila b'korach bino. He gave the mem, the letter mem, which is later going to be used to create the word for water, he gave it by the power of the bina to the element of water. He tied, now this mem, this element is being tied to the highest crown, because the highest crown is the place where all emanations come forth. And so from this place he brings forth the letter mem, and the letter mem means that now water is going to be revealed in these different faces. These aspects of creation are going to represent the water that emanated in the original revelation that is beyond perception. Now the letter mem received force from the highest crown. So the most interior, the deepest wheel, because all the different planets that are surrounding the sun like a clock. They all have their wheels, they all have their galgalim, they have their paths how they go around the sun. And the most internal one is the one we are on. This is the cycle that creates the day and the night, is when our own planet is turning around. And so this internal galgal, this internal wheel, is what the Eretz is referring to. והנה ביר כגבנינס גלגל המרכובס נויצר ממים אף בשקריס הנברא מאש כדרך כדאומר לקמן זה שאומר זל שמים מאש ומים. That there's a combination of water and fire in the higher realms. This is what creates the stars. That's why it's called Shamayim. Shamayim means a combination of fire and water. וקור בשונה פרש צור מכוח המם טבע הקור ביד בהזווייס כאשר יאלי ישראל מהם הקור מכוח תפארס המם הבא מכסר העליין. And so the power of the water is what creates the cold in the winter. A pre-betem benefesh, so he has a different girsa. We said beten benefesh. We said in consciousness you find water by the stomach. His girsa says a pre-betem benefesh. You find in consciousness water by our offspring, by fertility, by our ability to recreate through the seed. That you see that it can condense life all the way into a liquid. The spirit, through the body, can create life in the form of a liquid. And then life can be transferred in that form, and then it can be redeveloped to become life as a spirit. And so there what happened? Ruach, which is spirit, became mayim. It became a type of water. And this is how it got translated into the vessel, and then it was developed from there, and it became spirit again. So because there is live water, there's ruach alehim chaim, there's a divine spirit, and there's mayim chaim, there's live waters. When the water within our body is attached to the live spirit, then it's called live waters. These live waters is where we go to toivel in the mikveh in order to cleanse the spirit. So when the spirit has lost life, we need to bring it back to the mayim chaim in order to wake it up. וכן הקור איננו הקור אשר הוא חלק מגדר סיבוס המובס שהוא קר ויובש אשר בסיבוס יעודרו חי כל חי אבל המקור הזה בסוד מים קרים על נפש עייפו. And so it says the cold that he's talking about here is not the type of cold that kills. It's not freezing. It's the type of cold that gives life, like cold water on a tired soul. And so this cold means it's a place where the soul cools off. It's a place where the soul comes back from the entanglements that caused it to overheat. They left me the source of living water. And so the Spirit, the Holy Spirit, calls itself the source of living water. And when one leaves the Holy Spirit, it's like he's leaving the source of living water, and then his water is not going to be contained. Then he's going to have to search how to create in himself desire, because he's left the source of living water. This cold is speaking about the rain that comes graceful, and the dough that can resuscitate, that can give life back to a dead body. And on the higher realms, the fruit of the stomach represent the souls that come forth from the infinite. And so the individual souls are considered to be children, fruit of the collective soul. And so this water has the male side and the female side. The male side is first the water, then the air, and then the fire. And the female side is first the water, then the fire, then the air. And so here again we see that when the fire comes first, this represents the female, because the female is more fire. Also in the name Isha, is the eshes together, versus by ish there's a yud between the esh. And this is not only relating to male and female as we know it, because between the males and the females we will find males and females. And so it doesn't mean that every male and every female. It means these are the natural polarities that were created in order to create some type of a balance. And so a real woman will represent that reality in a way that is aligned with the deepest intention. And so from every element we will find within males and within females, physical people that are males and females, we will find that sometimes they represent the opposite, sometimes it's right for them, sometimes it's wrong for them. This is talking about the very prototype of how the worlds were created, how the elements were created. Here we're still on the level of the elements. But what happened on the level of the elements has an impact, has some type of a metaphor that is relating to how it will come out in a male and a female that we get to know. And so, for example, the male will think in ways that can relate more to water and be less passionate, less emotional about what he's speaking about, while the female will speak in ways that are more involved with emotion and are more passionate. And this relates to this fire element that is earlier within the combination of the forces. But like that, it can be in many different ways how it can come out for every individual. But every individual is a combination of many different males and females. Many different forms of the male and the female are existent within each individual. And so, for example, within the blood, the red blood cells and the white blood cells were already representing there the male and the female. The male represents the white and the female represents the red. And the relationship between these cells relates to the relationships of what is happening in the external world and in the world of the males and the females. Everything is somehow speaking to each other. The metaphor is not a theoretical idea. The metaphor is the actual way of how things play out. It's the actual reason why things are the way that they are. The last mission of this parak, Mishnah Ches, Him lechois shin be'esh, v'kosher lekeser v'tzorfen zeim zeh. And so shin, the letter shin, the sound of shin goes for the fire. And he ties it to a crown and he combines it with the others. V'choser b'hem shemayim ba'olam, the heavens in the world, the skies, the stars, the planets, the burning gas. V'chom b'shona, and the summer in time, the heat. V'rosh b'nefesh, the head in consciousness, zochar nekeva, the male and the female, again, the combination. And here he doesn't seem to specify which one is the zochar and which one is the nekeva, because this is the fire itself, so we would want to know who has the air first and who has the fire first. So according to a different gerse that does have them, it says zochar b'sham. The zochar is fire, then air, then water. And nekeva b'shmo, the female is fire, then water, then air. So all these things that we're learning, all these expressions of the essence, none of them are bad. This is the most extreme good that can be, is if we can be according to this design. It's when everything plays its role that the unity can be revealed, and the unity is better than all the details of what it takes in order to reveal the unity. And so all these are divine expressions of the original forces before they had any contamination, before anything meant anything negative in any way. Now that we are in the vessels that we are and we have the problems that we have, a lot of these details might become problematic for us. Sometimes we overthink things and our air element is out of balance, and there we find offense. Or we overfeel things and our fire and our water are not accurate. All these things are already after there's entanglement, after there's damage. But in the original design, there is no negative or positive. If it's accurate and authentic, it's the most positive that can be. And if it's not accurate and authentic, then it doesn't really exist. Then it's a misunderstanding. And so all these are divine expressions of the divine masculine and the divine feminine. And here in the commentary it says, Him lechos hashin v'kosher lekesed b'ma she'aleu b'tchila b'koach bina v'kosher es hashin b'ruch alim Chaim anikra keser elyon. And so he brings it up to the place of understanding. That's the one. That's the divine mother. That's the one who gives form to all that are going to come forth. And so over there, the shin gets its power from the ruach alim Chaim, from the divine spirit of life, anikra keser elyon, which is called the highest crown, like we said before. And he now receives power in order to come forth into space, time, and consciousness. He creates the heavens in space. Perish karurus hashemayim esh. וכן דוי כמצד המים השמיים לשמיים יספל גבנונס השמיים לקבל קור המים מהם. ומנו אש אשר בטבע קרורס השמיים יספל יסוד האש. And so there's a balance in the Shemaim, like we said before, between fire and water. But the essence of the heavens is the fire element that goes up. Through the shin, there will be heat within time. This means summer, and also the sun, which creates heat in time, which is what keeps the world at the right temperature so our bodies can exist here. And so this heat is the reason for our ability to exist there. If the temperature would go down only a few degrees, too many, none of us would be able to exist here. And so this heat is what keeps us and allows us to continue existing. The same goes for the nervous system, which is represented in the head. This represents the fire within the human body. So he's not speaking about just the brain, because the brain has many areas that are wet and cold. But he's talking about the heat that lives in there, and this is between the different sheets of the brain. There's a heat. And through this heat gets created a sensitivity where it can feel itself, and then it creates desire. You have to understand that everything that exists was created male and female. And so everywhere where there is existence, it has to be because there was a partnership between the crown and the Malchus, the kingdom. The Keser and the Malchus, the Keser, the beginning of the process, had to deliver to the end of the process, and then it came forth, which means that there was a unity between a male and a female, between one who was giving and one who was receiving. And therefore, in everything that's going to be created, there's going to be that representation of male and female. So every form comes out male and female. וכן מים יש מהם זכורים ומים מליונים ותחתונים נקייבס ומים בבראש השרה במסכת הסתנס וכן אש יש ממנה זוכר והיא אש עליונה ויש ממנה נקייב ואש שלמטה. There's different manifestations, so even on the physical level there's different types of fire, different types of water. וזהו סוד שפעם אני מוצאים אש בלושן המקרא זוכר פעם בלושן נקייב. We'll find fire in the Torah sometimes referred to as a male and sometimes as a female. וכן רוח וכן מים, the same goes for air and the same goes for water. וכן יש שמיים זכורים ויש מהם נקייבס. There are heavens that are more male and there are heavens that are more female. וכן בכוכב מזל, the same for the stars and for the astrological signs. וכן יש ארץ נקייבה ויש ארץ זוכר. Sometimes you can call the earth a nekeva, a female, and sometimes a male. וכן יש רוח זוכר ורוח נקייבה. There are spirits that are male and female. ורוחס הם חס, פרטים, יד בייז מן רוחס, כנגדם יד בייז רוחס שובים. The winds There are different winds coming from different directions. So all these winds, some of them are male, some of them are female. You have from the astrological signs 6 that are male and 6 that are female that we counted before. Is the same goes for the spirits that come forth from them, that they animate the manifested world. Some of them come in the shape of a male and some of them come in the shape of a female. There could be a year that's more feminine and a year that's more masculine. Same goes for the physical male and female, the human bodies. And so every time that there is a manifestation that is male or female, everything is in order to create a perfect harmony. That is how creation can happen. And so male and female get along in all the different dimensions. In our dimension, in the dimension of the human interaction, this is where there's conflict, and this is what results in all the worlds going through some type of a restriction. But in their essence, all the males and the females in creation were created to know how to cooperate with each other in order to create life. And this is why the world can be the way that it is. And so there is no chance in these things. There's nothing that happens without cause. Everything is an exact demonstration of something that needs to be a certain way. Everything needs to be respected because it's the essence that's being revealed specifically in this form, specifically in this clothing. And so the male must know how to be a male. The female must know how to be a female. And she must be so accurately. If she won't be accurate and authentic to the way that she is a female, or the male to the way that he is a male, then there will be a disruption in this cycle that creates the perfect life. The perfect life that's created between all males and all females, it can only happen when the male is accurately male and the female is accurately female. And this, unfortunately, relies on the cultures, and this is why humanity has deteriorated. It's because the cultures are not creating a manifestation of male and female that is accurate to the design, and then it causes disruption. And this disruption is at the root of all disruption. This is the root of galus. This is the root of exile. The root of exile is that the male is not properly male and the female is not properly female, and therefore the relationship between them is not the intended relationship. The Tzelem Elohim has not been respected. The soul is not feeling that it's being revealed in the way that it pleases. And then there is conflict. Once there's conflict in all the worlds. Once there's conflict in consciousness, this conflict in consciousness will be revealed in space and time. The events of space and time, the circumstances that come forth from space and time, are going to reveal the conflict that is taking place in consciousness. And so when we will return, when we will rediscover, when we will remember, then V'hoya Hashem lemelech al kol haaretz, the root, the invisible part of our being, returns to be the king on all the worlds. And then Bayom Hahu Yeh Hashem Echad, this is the divine masculine, Ishmo Echad, the divine feminine. We will know how to receive his unity. We will know how to receive his name. We will know how to combine as one, as his female, and receive him the way that he wants to be received. This is when the name will be one. And that's redemption. That's when the unity returns. And then it's demonstrated in every place where there's an expression, where there's a revelation of the essence. In every place we will see that unity being demonstrated. May it happen now.